Only 1% truly understand what it means to be a dark chosen one. You ever feel like you were born different? Like there's a storm inside you that refuses to be tamed? Not in a chaotic or destructive way, but in a way that feels ancient, mysterious, heavy with knowledge and pain. I'm not talking about rebellion or being misunderstood. I'm talking about an invisible thread that pulls you towards something darker, deeper, and far more powerful than anything you were taught in school or in church. This isn't about being evil. This is about being chosen, specifically a dark chosen one. And let me say this right now, most people will never understand what it means. They couldn't. Not because they're less, but because their path was never meant to walk beside the void. But you still here, listening, feeling this truth rise in your chest like a forgotten memory. Maybe you've always felt like you didn't belong in the light, not because you hated it, but because it burned you. You tried to be like everyone else. You smiled when you were supposed to. You prayed when they told you to. You obeyed the rules. But deep down, you always knew something sacred was off. You didn't come here to fit in. You came here to remember.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Being a dark chosen one isn't about worshipping darkness. It's about mastering it, transcending it, walking through it, not around it, and returning with the wisdom that only shadows can reveal. You see, light can blind, light can be deceptive, but darkness is honest. It hides nothing from those who dare to see. The dark chosen one is the one who stared into the abyss and instead of retreating, walked straight in. But let's be clear, this path is not glamorous, it's not cinematic, it's not about aesthetics, pentagrams, or edgy quotes on Instagram. It's about facing the parts of yourself you were taught to fear, reject, or destroy. And that's why only 1% truly understand, because most people are terrified of themselves. They crave comfort over truth. They want heaven, but they don't want to descend into hell to earn it. But what if your hell was never a punishment but a womb? What if the fire you walk through was not meant to consume you, but to forge you? Let me ask you something. What part of yourself have you locked away so tightly that even you forgot it existed? What aspect of your being have you labeled too much, too dark, too dangerous? That's where your power lives. That's where your initiation begins. The dark chosen one is called not by angels, but by silence. Not by crowds, but by solitude. It begins with a sense of alienation, a feeling of being dropped into the wrong timeline. Your friends don't understand you. Your family thinks you're too sensitive, too intense, or too quiet. But what they don't realize is that you've been watching, listening, absorbing the lies of the world and quietly dismantling them from the inside. You've had moments, haven't you, where the veil lifted and reality cracked just a little. Maybe it happened during heartbreak. Maybe it happened in the middle of a storm, or in a dream so vivid it shook you awake. In that moment, you remembered something ancient. Maybe you couldn't name it. Maybe it scared you. But that was the moment you were marked. The dark chosen one walks the path of polarity. You're not here to reject the light or glorify the dark. You're here to integrate both, to become whole. And wholeness requires you to sit with your demons, not slay them. Because in truth, those demons were your protectors. They were born when you were too young to defend yourself. They screamed when you are silenced. They raged when you are powerless. And now they wait for you, not to banish them, but to embrace them. This is not an easy task. The world teaches us to fear our own power. They tell us that anger is wrong, that sadness is weakness, that silence is awkward, and that solitude is dangerous. But what if I told you that your anger was sacred, that your sadness was a portal, that your silence was your power, and that your solitude was the initiation into your highest self? People will call you strange. They'll say you're lost, but in truth, they're terrified of your clarity. When you walk the dark path consciously, you become a mirror, and in that mirror, people are forced to see what they've been running from. That's why they react. That's why they attack, not because you are dangerous, but because you are free. You're not bound by the same illusions. You don't play by the same rules. You don't need their validation because you've already met the parts of yourself that no one else could accept. And you didn't flinch. And here's the paradox. The more you embrace your darkness, the more light you carry. Not the superficial kind of light, the kind that wants to be liked. No, I'm talking about true light. The light that illuminates everything, even the rot. The light that heals not by covering the wound, but by going straight into it. You might ask, but why me? Why were you chosen? Why do you feel things so deeply? Why do you suffer in silence while the world spins around you, blind and numb? Because you were made for this. You were built to transform pain into power, fear into wisdom, and wounds into weapons. Not to hurt others, but to protect truth. You are not broken. You are forged. And every scar, every breakdown, every dark night of the soul, it was all leading you here. But here's the catch. You must choose it. The path won't be handed to you. The map is hidden in your own blood, your own tears, your own memories, and no one can walk it for you. Not your parents, not your lover, not your favorite guru, only you. So I ask you now, are you willing to remember who you are? Are you willing to dig into the soil of your subconscious and unearth the parts of yourself that were buried alive? Are you willing to become whole, even if it means being misunderstood, feared, or even hated? Because the truth is, the dark chosen one walks alone, until they don't, until they find others like them, scattered across the world like embers waiting to ignite, and when they do, it's not a rebellion. It's a resurrection. The world doesn't need more people pretending to be good. The world needs people who are real, people who have seen the darkest parts of themselves and didn't run, people who turned that darkness into depth, into wisdom, into medicine. You are not here to be liked, you are here to be legendary. The sacred violence of awakening. At some point on this path, the silence becomes unbearable, not the silence outside, the silence inside. It's not peaceful, it's not still, it's heavy, like standing in a room where something unspeakable happened and no one remembers except you. That's the violence of awakening. It's not blood and blades, it's not a scream, it's a slow unraveling of everything you thought was real. And it doesn't ask for your permission, it just begins. Quietly. You wake up one day and realize the people you've trusted most were never really listening. The beliefs you were spoon-fed since childhood were cages dressed as comfort. The things you were told to pursue, success, approval, control, were traps. And suddenly, you can't lie to yourself anymore. That's the sacred violence. It's not the world attacking you, it's you seeing the world for what it is. All the masks, all the illusions, and being unable to unsee it. It's the death of innocence and the birth of clarity. You begin to question everything. Why do I feel this way? Why do I keep repeating the same cycles? Why does love hurt? Why does truth feel so far away? And the answers don't come in words, they come in echoes, in dreams, in breakdowns, in patterns you can no longer ignore. The dark chosen one doesn't awaken in a temple with incense and chants. They awaken in the wreckage, in the betrayal, in the silence after a scream that no one heard. And here's the hardest part. This awakening doesn't make you special. It makes you responsible. Responsible for your healing. Responsible for your shadow. Responsible for the ripple you send out into the world. You can't blame your parents forever. You can't blame society, religion, or your ex. The moment you awaken, the weight of your own becoming falls into your hands, and that weight will crush the parts of you that were never real to begin with. That's how the violence becomes sacred. It's a divine destruction. You lose things, friends, desires, sometimes your entire identity. The ego fights back, it panics, it screams, "You're going to die if you let this go." But the voice of the soul whispers, "Good, let it die. Let the version of you that was built on fear and survival fall apart. Only then can the real you rise from the ashes, not the applause." Have you ever looked into the mirror and not recognized who you were pretending to be? That's the moment it begins. The sacred violence. You start to shed not just habits, but lifetimes. Stories you inherited, wounds that were passed down like heirlooms. You realize you've been living out someone else's narrative, and the moment you choose to write your own, the world gets quiet, people pull away. You get labeled as changing, difficult, different, but you're not different, you're real, and realness terrifies people who are still asleep. You'll want to go back, I won't lie. There will be nights when you'd give anything to return to the safety of ignorance, to be blind, numb, and accepted. But you can't unknow what you now know. You can't unsee the truth, and that's your burden and your blessing. Because here's the secret, the more you lose, the more space you create for truth, for alignment, for real love, for real power. But that power doesn't feel like a rush, it feels like peace, like presence, like no longer needing anything outside of yourself to feel whole. That's the power of the awakened, dark chosen one. You stop chasing, you start embodying, you stop reacting, you start responding. You become a force not by effort but by essence. And yes, it's lonely, but solitude is not punishment, it's purification. It's where the noise dies and the signal gets strong. It's where you meet your guides. Not the ones in robes, but the ones who speak in symbols, in silence, in synchronicities. You begin to live in two worlds, the external one of illusion and the internal one of truth, and you learn how to walk through both without losing yourself. So I ask you again, are you willing to let it all burn? Not just the pain, but the stories that make you feel safe in your suffering? Are you willing to become unrecognizable to your peers, to your family, even to yourself, in order to become who you truly are? Because awakening is not a gentle process. It's not a spa day for the soul. It's a war, a sacred war, and the battlefield is within. But when you emerge, scarred, sovereign, and silent, you will know the violence was never against you, it was for you. Alchemy of shadows, turning pain into power. There comes a moment deep in your journey when the pain stops being just pain. It starts to shimmer, it starts to vibrate with a strange kind of intelligence. You wake up one day and realize that your suffering, your heartbreaks, your betrayals, your breakdowns were never random. They were maps, codes, initiations. Each wound a doorway, each scar a key. And you begin to understand the darkness didn't come to destroy you, it came to shape you, to prepare you for something most people will never be strong enough to carry, your true self. This is the alchemy of the dark chosen one. We don't escape our shadows, we sit with them. We listen, we learn, we let them speak in their raw, unfiltered tongues. And in doing so, we discover the gold hidden inside the mud. Because every fear you've ever had is a lesson in disguise. Every trauma you've endured is a rite of passage. The world will tell you to just move on, to be strong, to stay positive, but positivity without integration is spiritual denial. Real strength is not pretending to be above pain. Real strength is diving into the pain so deeply that you touch its root and pull it out with your own hands. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be honest. That's the secret. That's the power. Radical honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. Can you admit where you've been fake, where you've worn masks, where you've blamed others instead of facing your own reflection? Can you own your rage, your lust, your jealousy, your grief? Not to act on it, but to underneath each dark emotion is a message. Anger is protection. Grief is love that couldn't find a place to land. Jealousy is unclaimed potential. Lust is creative energy misplaced. When you name them, fill them and transmute them, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of your inner world. You become its master. And that's when everything shifts. You walk differently, you speak differently. People feel something in you even if they can't name it. It's presence, it's depth. It's the frequency of someone who's been to hell and came back with fire in their eyes and peace in their chest. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. You don't need to convince people of your worth. You embody it quietly, powerfully. But don't mistake this for ego. This isn't arrogance. This is remembrance. You're remembering that you were never broken to begin with. You were just buried under layers of conditioning, shame, and fear. And now you're unearthing yourself. Piece by piece, breath by breath, shadow. So many people are afraid of their own depth. They fear silence. They fear solitude. They fear feeling too much. But you were born to feel it all, to carry the weight of ancestral wounds and still rise, to look your demons in the eye and recognize them as lost parts of yourself, to transmute pain into purpose and purpose into presence. You are not here to escape the darkness. You are here to become the lighthouse, not by shining over it, but by shining through it. Every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you choose presence over distraction, every time you choose love in the face of fear, you are doing sacred work. You are healing the collective through your own becoming. So I ask you, what part of your pain are you still running from? What would happen if you stopped running and turned to face it, fully, completely, without resistance? What truth would it reveal? What power would it return to you? Because the dark chosen one doesn't just survive the shadows, they transform within them. They turn poison into medicine. They take what was meant to break them and build empires of wisdom from the ruins. Born of the void, the rise of the silent kings and queens. Eventually, the war quiets, not because the world changes, but because you do. The chaos doesn't stop knocking, but you stop answering with fear. You stop reacting, you stop explaining, you stop shrinking. What was once unbearable becomes sacred. What once felt like punishment now feels like preparation. You've walked through the fire, through the nights with no stars, through the silence that once screamed. And now you carry something most will never touch, a stillness forged in the void. This is the final transformation. Not an end, but a beginning. You become a king or queen, not the kind who rules over people, but the kind who rules over themselves. You no longer seek attention. You command energy. You don't need to speak loudly. Your presence speaks for you. You no longer chase validation, applause, or belonging. You've become your own home, your own sanctuary, your own sovereign. The dark chosen ones are not the loudest in the room. They are the ones who can sit in silence and still shake the atmosphere. They are the ones who don't need to be seen to see, who don't need to be heard to hear. They have nothing to prove, because they've already faced the only enemy that ever mattered, the unhealed parts of themselves. And now, you walk with reverence not just for yourself, but for everything. You see the sacred in the broken. You see the beauty in the shadows. You look at others not with judgment, but with deep compassion, because you know what it means to fall apart and rise again. You wear your scars like symbols, not of what hurt you, but of what built you. You no longer fear the void, you are the void. The space where truth is born, where illusions die, where souls remember. You're not here to fix the world. You're here to become the frequency that reminds the world of what's real. And that doesn't require fame, fortune, or followers. It requires presence. It requires truth. It requires alignment so deep that even in a room of chaos, you remain unshaken. So I ask you, one final time, who are you beneath it all? Beneath the masks, the memories, the wounds? What would happen if you stopped seeking and started embodying? If you stopped waiting to be chosen and finally chose yourself? Because the age of false kings is ending. The age of hollow crowns and empty thrones is dying. And in its place, something ancient is rising. Not loud, not flashy, but eternal. The dark chosen ones, born of the void, forged in silence, rising now, not to rule, but to remind that we were never meant to be perfect. We were meant to be whole, and wholeness begins in the dark.